council. Thank you all for being here. If you'll rise for the invocation, please. Almighty God, we just give you great thanks and praise for the honor to serve our community in this way. We pray that you would melt us and mold us and fill us and use us in a way that would bring honor and glory to you. And we ask this all in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Please remain standing for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May be seated. Okay, just to make council aware, we're going to pull the executive session from tonight's meeting. Are there any changes to the agenda tonight?
No, sir, there are not.
Okay, you've all received the minutes from our last meeting. If there are no questions or comments, I'll accept the motion to receive the minutes.
Councilman Holland, Mr. Mayor, I make that motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Councilman King, I'll second the motion.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Do we have any correspondence, City Manager?
No, sir, we do not.
All right, first on the agenda, we have the Seaford Community Swim Center agreement. I'm going to invite Mrs. Newcomer up to present the agreement.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You each have in your packet, in your board pack, a copy of the agreement with Seaford Community Swim Center. Here this evening is the treasurer, Ms. Sheila Kintz, and Vice President Nancy Sturgeon, representing Seaford Community Swim Center. It's primarily the same agreement. There's just been a few minor changes. One, in the fact that we want to make this for a 3-year term, and then additionally to change the annual reporting to once a year versus the monthly that you see in there, the red line. Any questions?
Is that it? All right, are there any questions in regards to the agreement with the Seaford Community Swim Center? If not, I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the agreement with the Seaford Community Swim Center for management of the pool operation located at 1035 West Locust Street as presented.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Santos. Is there a second?
Councilman Henderson, I second.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions on the motion? If not, we'll do a roll call vote. Councilman Santos.
Aye.
Councilman Henderson.
Aye.
Councilman Holland.
Aye.
Councilman McCoy.
Aye.
Councilman King.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you, and thank you all for what you do. It's a great asset to our community to pull out there. Appreciate all you do. Thank you.
Thank you for your support in our endeavors.
Yep, summer will be here before you know it.
Hooray!
Just get through the next snow. All right, next we're going to invite up Mr. Chris Sims to go through the power cost adjustment.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So we're going to look at the relevelization of the PCAC for the electric customers. Every year, every calendar year, which is the DMEC fiscal year, they update the wholesale power supply cost rate for each of the DMEC members. And there was a pretty significant increase in the power supply cost this year. If we flip over to page 2, the wholesale rate from DMEC is going from $69.47 a megawatt hour up to $74.27 a megawatt hour. And we talked about it a little bit briefly in October. The forecast at that time was that it was only going to go up to about $72 a megawatt hour. So you can see the increase is a little bit higher than expected. So for the city of Seaford, what that means is the wholesale costs are going up about $555,000 a year. And that's roughly almost a 7% increase in the wholesale rate from DMEC. So as is required by the city's ordinance, any time that there's a change in power supply cost where the magnitude is greater than 3% of the total power supply cost for the year, which this increase is, we have to do a relevelization of the PCAC. So that's what I've calculated on the following page. So the following page shows historically, or at least currently, our PCAC is a credit of 0.01161 per kilowatt hour, and that would need to be reduced. So it's going to be a smaller credit thus increasing customers' bills, is going to be reduced to a credit of negative .006 per kilowatt hour. And so this increase is roughly in line with all the DMEC members are going to have to make a similar adjustment to their PCACs as well. So, unfortunately, our hands are pretty much tied in terms of what we can do with the rates. Page 4 shows what the impact is for each retail rate class. So on average for the entire city, it's about a 4.2% increase in rates. And for the residential customers specifically, it's a 3.9% increase for the residential customers. And so the page 5 shows the historical cost for a 1,000 kilowatt hour residential customer. I had included this chart when we increased the rates in October for the out-of-period adjustments to the salaries to make for the competitive pay increases. And so taking that with this increase here today that's being proposed, we're still 7% less than what we were at our peak following the recession in 2008. And we're roughly right about exactly, well, we're almost exactly where we were back in 2018. So all in all, the fact that we haven't hit all-time highs, which everything else seems to be hitting all-time highs, we're doing particularly well in terms of managing the cost of the electric department. The next page shows us what the comparison is to Delmarva Power, the largest investor-owned utility in the state. And so a 1,000 kilowatt hour residential customer after this increase is roughly within 6% of Delmarva Power's rates. It is a little bit more expensive here, but that's again because the city electric department funds other things outside of just the electric budget to assist with the general fund expenses. And the following page shows what the comparison is to Delaware Electric Co-op. They are proposing a $10 per megawatt hour increase for their 1,000 kilowatt hour customers, and that's going into effect March 1st, so just right around the corner. So it's not just the municipalities, but everybody is experiencing the aftershocks of where prices are just unfortunately going at this point in time. So that is the calculation of the PCAC and what the impacts are. Are there any questions?
Any questions from council? Councilman Henderson?
I have two. First off, I believe congratulations are in order for the addition to your family.
Oh, yes, thank you, yeah.
First off, do you have any idea what the DMAC forecast is moving forward from here? Are they still counting on escalations or leveling off or maybe a decrease?
Mm-hmm. So the last time that they provided a 5-year forecast was in 2017. So 2022 was the last year of that forecast where they said it was going to be about $72 a megawatt hour. So I do not have a additional forecast from DMEC, but what I can say is that knowing that they do not procure 100% of the power supply requirements for the DMEC members at one time. And that's where you would get the most stability and predictability in your rates. However, when there are large swings, particularly in the other direction, as we've experienced over the last 10 years, power supply costs have come down. I mean, they were in the mid-90s per megawatt hour. Now it's down to 72. So if you lock in your rates for a real long time, obviously at that higher price, as the prices come down, you don't get to share in that benefit. So while we have experienced pretty significant reductions in costs over the last decade, unfortunately, I think there's only one way it can go from here, which is back up. And so they haven't provided any forecast going forward, but I would not be, I don't think it's going to be in this order of magnitude for 2023, but I would expect another increase for the next fiscal year as well.
Okay, thank you. Next question would be, this chart on page 7, which compares the residential rate with deck. Does that include the proposed $10 increase?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so it's not current rate, it's the future rate starting March 1st for Delaware Electric Cooperative.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because it includes the city's rate, which would be
Okay.
for February's billing.
Right.
So-
I just wanted to make sure that,
Yep.
that what I was comparing. Yeah, thank you.
Other questions from council? Councilman King?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So for the people at home that are watching and can't see this report, what kind of impact would you say that would have just on a standard residential rate?
So typically, we use the industry standard is to look at 1,000 kilowatt hour a month customer, because that's roughly on average what the customers would use throughout the course of the year. And so it makes the math easy when you have when you have this increase in the PCA of 5 mils, you essentially just multiply it by 1,000, in which case there would be a $5 increase on their monthly bill for a 1,000 kilowatt hour customer. So the monthly increase of about $5.
Great, thank you. Appreciate it.
Other questions from council? Okay, thanks, Chris. If there are no other questions, I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion to apply the re-levelized power cost adjustment clause, PCAC, credit of .00600 per kilowatt hour to be effective as of February 1st, 2022, as presented.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman McCoy. Is there a second?
Councilman Holland, Mr. Mayor, I second that motion.
Okay, are there any questions on the motion? If not, we'll do a roll call vote. Councilman McCoy?
Aye.
Councilman Holland?
Aye.
Councilman Henderson?
Aye.
Councilman Santos?
Aye.
Councilman King?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Chris, thank you for your work. I know this is an impact to our community, but unfortunately, it's just the way the rates are going right now, so
Yeah,
appreciate your work on this.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Sims.
All right, next we have the change to the fee and rate schedule.
All right, so just to dovetail with that, as council is well aware, we update our fee and rate schedule and whenever there is a rate change. So you'll see there on page 2 of 8, the purchase power cost adjustment clause about middle way down the page. That is the change that Mr. Sims just described. So this is just a tracking issue. That's the only change to this document. So if there are any questions, Mr. Sims or I, or Ms. Sapp is also here. She can answer any questions. And this would be effective February 1st of this year.
Okay, are there any questions to the fee and rate schedule? If not, I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve the changes to the fee and rate schedule to include changes to the power cost adjustment clause, PCAC, to be effective February 1, 2022, as presented.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman McCoy. Is there a second?
Councilman Holland, Mr. Mayor, I second that motion.
Okay, are there any questions on the motion? Okay, again, we'll do a roll call vote. Councilman McCoy?
Aye.
Councilman Holland?
Aye.
Councilman Henderson?
Aye.
Councilman Santos?
Aye.
Councilman King?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. All right, new business number 4. Do you want to walk through that one?
Yes,
City
sir.
Manager?
Mr. Shaw, the property owner of Sussex Highway, 22512 Sussex Highway, the Sunrise Motel, he did request of staff to place him on the agenda to review a proposal that he had for an on-site septic. You'll see in your package on January 23rd, he did communicate with us that he would like to request withdrawal of that request. So council does not need to deal with it at this point.
Okay, if there are no questions about that, we'll move on. All right, bids for the dump truck.
Mr. Bennett's going to come up.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and City Manager.
Good evening.
We put out bids for a dump truck for our chipper. that we purchased last year. Wrote up the specs and put it out. Unfortunately, we received no bids back. One of the comments I heard was there's no chassis available to build a truck, and they don't want to lock prices in. I talked, one dealer, local dealer, has one on the lot. It's a little different than what we spec'd. I spec'd a gas engine with a regular cab. This was a diesel engine with a crew cab, 4-door, and it was like 30% higher. So between what the prices we used in the budget a year ago with the increases, and then that, it was out of rim. So I'm looking at state bid to see if there's any on state bid to maybe bring that back. If not, we'll put it in next year's budget and try to go again.
Okay. Thank you for the update. Appreciate it. We don't need a motion or anything on that,
We
correct?
do not, no, sir.
All right, next we have the industrial park fence.
Yeah, we put out the bids to do phase 2 of the buffer fence in the industrial park. Last year, we did the first 1,000 feet. This year, we propose to do the next 1,000, and next year, we'll finish it out with roughly another 1,000 feet. We got 3 bids back in response to the advertised bid. Breakwater fence at $37,990. Able fence at $59,900, and Long Fence Company at $71,406. I would recommend awarding the bid to the low bidder, Breakwater Fence Company, in the amount of $37,990. I have $35,000 in the budget for this project. I have $4,000 in the capital budget for mats that I'm not going to be purchasing because of the price of those almost doubled this year. So this would cover the cost of the overrun for the fence. We do not need option 1 in this section of the fence. That's for a second gate if we needed one, but in this area, we don't need one. So I recommend going low bid, Breakwater fence, $37,990.
Mr. Bennett, can you remind me who did the first 1,000 feet?
Nanacoke Fence did.
And they chose not to bid on
Yeah,
this?
we did not receive a bid from them this year.
Okay, all right, thank you. Are there any questions in regards to the buffer fence? If not, I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion to award a bid for the industrial park buffer fence to Breakwater Fence in the amount of $37,990 as presented.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman McCoy. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Councilman Santos seconds. Are there any question on the motion? If not, we'll do a roll call vote. Councilman McCoy?
Aye.
Councilman King?
Aye.
Councilman Santos?
Aye.
Councilman Henderson?
Aye.
Councilman Holland?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thanks, Bill, for your work on that.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, next we have the first reading of the, to amend Chapter 12.
Our chief of police is going to come present that.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'll be brief, sir. I'll try to. So I approached Mr. Bailey from Code Enforcement to research some ordinances that may help us with some pedestrian safety, public safety concerns that we had. And just to lay a brief foundation, we've experienced a significant increase in traffic crashes. So in 2021, we had 620 crashes here in the city. Last year, or the prior year, we had 533, just to give you an idea. And I pulled some crime view data as well that I'll go over here briefly with you about some of the main intersection concerns, which is there at McDonald's and Walmart. Pretty much anything on the highway area, those intersection areas in Walmart, north and southbound, east and westbound. They're high crash areas for us. And so we have noticed, and this is for public safety. I want to make that first and foremost. This is not about panhandlers, although panhandlers have came there causing concern because I've noticed on a number of occasions there's a narrow concrete median, so to speak, across from McDonald's there on Stein Highway. I've seen individuals there several times. Very concerning because it's not very wide. Just one misstep and they'll be right out in traffic, and there's a ton of traffic there. And we already have had one fatal this year. We've had fatals all around us. I think the state of Delaware seen a significant increase for the first half of the year last year, and I haven't got their totals for the end of the year yet. But it is very concerning. So we started looking at some areas, different cities. Mike found one out in Madison, Wisconsin. And so what it does, it doesn't restrict panhandling, right? We can address issues with panhandling if they're aggressive. That's the concern with public safety, quality of life issues. But for this is a public safety, pedestrian safety issue. So Mike made it pretty simple. He took the best parts of the ordinance and laid it out here, and it's in front of you. And I'll read it for the record so that the public can hear it. And so we're going to be looking at adding this to our 12.1.13. And it's going to be covering no person other than a person in or on a vehicle shall be on a city street and approach any vehicle in operation except a vehicle that is legally parked at the curb or shoulder. B would be no person shall upon a median or in a city unless a person is in process of crossing a highway in a public safety zone or a crosswalk. And it would be prima facie evidence of a violation of this section if a person stays in the median through 2 consecutive opportunities to cross the highway in a legal manner under this chapter and under the state of Delaware traffic laws. This may include a change in the traffic control signal or lack of traffic as applicable. After such 2 consecutive opportunities, such persons shall not be considered to be using the safety zone or crosswalk of the highway. C would cover no operator of a vehicle shall park, stop, or leave stand in a vehicle on a city street where prohibited, or suddenly decrease the speed of said vehicle, or deviate from a traffic lane for the purpose of responding to a person, which would be in violation of A or B that I just read. And D, this ordinance applies to intersections at any streets of right-of-way within the incorporated boundaries of the city of Seaford, but only for the first 200 feet of the intersection as measured along the center lines where 2 rights-of-way intersect. So as you can see, this lays out an ordinance that doesn't prohibit anybody from panhandling. Passively, holding a sign, they can still do that. We're just asking that they stay 200 feet back from a crossover intersection for fear of pedestrian safety issues. People tend to look down, people tend to look away, or people tend to stop and someone else not paying attention. We already have major crashes at these intersections going north and south. Now, I will say the one thing that's not covered on here, if you haven't inquired, but well, what would the fine be or something like that, that's covered underneath of the Chapter 1 general provisions for the City of Seaford ordinances, and that's under 1.1.25, and the general penalty, the fine would not exceed $50 for a first incident. If they have a conviction of a second or subsequent offense, it could be no less than $100, right? So with that ordinance, I went ahead tonight before I came in. I wanted to pull some real-time data for you guys. So from January 1 to just maybe a couple hours ago, I went out there and I looked. And I'm more than willing to hand this over, and you guys can look at it as we talk. And I can provide you with a PDF at another date through the city manager if you like as well. I just drew a self-defined boundary from just north of Heron Run Road to just south of Stein Highway. And you can see there's a lot of pins. I don't know if the public would be able to see it, but there's 16 pins just from the first of the year that has crashes. And it's about evenly dispersed, 7 or 8 at the Walmart, Heron Run Road, Thorpe Road, Sussex Highway, north-southbound, east-westbound area, and about the same at McDonald's, north-south, east and west crossovers. So I went back and looked also for year-to-date for 2021 for the year, and not only did I pull self-defined boundaries for those same locations, but I also included for your review, if you like, at a later time, each one of those incidents. So you can see the primary contributing factor, although there's multiple, the largest one is inattentive driving. And if you look at my liaison reports on a biweekly basis, the contributing factor for those crashes I listed in there, you got to look at it, read it, it's kind of buried in there, but that's primarily, generally, what the problem is for most of our crashes. They're not paying attention. And then the most harmful event would be whatever happens from that point forward, whether it's a pedestrian struck or a bicyclist struck or a car struck. And so I've got that data here for you. But for the 2021, there were 44 crashes in that intersection up at the Walmart area. Heron Run Road, Thorpe Road, Sussex Highway, north-south, east-west. Down at McDonald's, there was 50. generally speaking. Now, you got to understand, officers write these crash reports are electronic, and they have to use a cursor, right, to kind of pin the crash through geolocate. So they kind of go all over in there. But generally, they're all crashes. They're all happening in those intersections there. So these are some very concerning things for me. And Mike, I want to thank Mike too. He did a really good job researching this. And that's what I presented there. Now, I do know that there's probably some concerns because, you know, in general speaking, the ACLU has addressed certain concerns with public safety and with folks that are non-aggressive in panhandling. And they've said that that's a First Amendment protected speech, and it certainly is. This has nothing to do with restricting panhandlers. What it does have to do is restricting them back 200 feet so they're not causing accidents or being struck themselves. And on top of that, we would handle this just as Councilman Henderson and I did as well. We would do a public service announcement. We wouldn't start charging people, obviously, right away. They would be contacted. They'd be provided with a copy of the ordinance, made aware of what it is and what it means. We would also give them the same literature because we have tons of nonprofit organizations that we partner with to provide them with the resources they need. And just today, I completed an MOU and also completed a cover sheet, which is a check sheet for officers for our diversion program. Now we're just waiting to get it back from our solicitor and to get it back from the counselor, and we'll be ready to sign a contract and be up. So we would also have an in-house person to help address issues through substance abuse disorders, mental health disorders, and anything else in conjunction with our nonprofit partners. So this is a way for us to hopefully protect everybody and give them options so they don't have to be charged.
Okay.
But it would be written, a report would be written, and if the offense occurs again after notice, they would be charged. And I'm available to answer any questions that anyone may have.
All right, this is just a first reading, but are there any questions to the amended Chapter 12? Councilman McCoy?
I'm curious, you said this ordinance came from Wisconsin, is that correct?
Yeah, we were trying to find something that had passed, that may or may not have been challenged legally, and theirs passed all of the smell tests. They passed, I think, legislatively. And really, it's because they're not trying to restrict panhandling.
Yeah.
Other ordinances that had issues, ACLU issues, were simply trying to restrict it altogether.
Sure.
Because they didn't want to see it. This is simply doing nothing more than pushing them back a little bit out of that danger zone. You know?
So I was curious if, when that was, and if there was any way of knowing how successful it was in Wisconsin.
No, I couldn't answer that. Mike did the research on it, and he may have some of that information. But I think generally speaking, I've also in here, and I know I'm trying to keep this brief, but I also have multiple articles from the Delaware State Police, City of Wilmington, and other jurisdictions going back several years ago. There are laws on the books right now where we could charge. And just to make it clear, we've not been charging folks with loitering for the purpose of begging, right? Other jurisdictions have. And that doesn't go over well because they're trying to prohibit them from panhandling. And it doesn't matter where they're at. This is a completely different type of presentation that we're trying to address without infringing on anybody's First Amendment rights, while also partnering with nonprofits and our own police diversion program to provide assistance in their substance abuse disorders, mental health disorders, and at the same time not infringing on them so they can still be out there. But the problem is the manner that they're doing it, even though it's just holding a sign, it's endangering motorists and it's endangering themselves. So if I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't at least present it so you can consider the options.
Councilman King?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, I got just a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
As you alluded to, of course, it's public property, right?
No.
No?
Medians are part of the road. There's two laws, Title 11 and Title 21. You can actually cite individuals because the median is considered part of the roadway. We haven't done that.
Okay, so that was part of my question. So if that's not public property, right, so you can restrict access to the property, once again, not the constitutional right of holding a sign and asking for money, I get that. But why not, instead of saying, hey, 200 feet, right, we're going to create an ordinance that nowhere else in the state has, right?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Not that I'm aware of.
So we're gonna create this ordinance, right, with public safety in mind. Why not just say, since you're saying it's part of the roadway, Why be there at all?
Well, because the whole idea is to not infringe on their First Amendment rights to be able to do that. The numbers, the data, when I pull up Crime View, you can do a search of some specific area. I can look at the general city map and see all the crashes, and overwhelming majority of our crashes are at our intersections. And the two worst intersections, unfortunately, happen to be the intersections you see them most at. And the one that makes me cringe the most, quite frankly, is that center small concrete island. And there are other jurisdictions in other states that have them, and they actually go as far as saying nowhere on any median if it's smaller than a certain amount, you know. But we're doing our best to try to keep this for public safety, for pedestrian safety and public safety.
And I get that, and I
Yeah.
respect that, but what's the width, would you say, of our mediums currently? If you go out and measure them, do they vary, or are they the same?
They're large medians, and if you stand, you know, you could stand in the middle, and I guess you could say it'd probably be, I don't know, 20 feet, I'd say. I'm not sure exactly what it'd be. It depends on if it's a east-west or north-south,
Right.
you know. And some are much smaller. Like I said, McDonald's might be only maybe 3 feet or something. I don't have the measurements.
And that brings me back to my point.
Yeah.
I mean, the men and women of the police department are very busy, extremely busy.
Yes, we are.
So now we're going to create an ordinance. We're going to say, hey, you could be out there as long as you're not 200 feet.
That's correct.
And so then if they're out there, somebody calls a complaint, somebody's got to respond to the incident.
We already do. We already are. And the whole idea of this is just to educate them, push them back 200 feet for safety. I'd much rather handle a contact than a fatal accident or a serious injury
Yeah,
accident.
and I get that, but
Yeah.
my point being, why not eliminate it altogether?
Eliminate them from being able to be standing there at all,
Yeah.
at all. Because I think that would be an infringement. I think that would be going too far. Because I can't say that them standing 300, 200 or 300, 400 feet back down an intersection or down a median is going to be a public safety issue, because you don't have the intersections where people are stopping, slowing down, you know, stopping inadvertently. I think those intersections, and the data shows us, is the most dangerous, you know. So that's why generally there's also legislation right now, just in full disclosure here, that we started this process before, and that's being presented to eliminate the Title 11 loitering charge, right? Because loitering for the purpose of begging, you know, if they're not being aggressive, is a protected First Amendment right. And I don't think anybody would disagree with that if they're not committing a crime. The problem becomes is there's Title 21, which is the traffic code. They're not doing a thing with that one. And then they could still be cited with that. But then you're still going to run into some same problems. Delaware City has had some issues with it. Wilmington's retracted their ordinances. But the problem is, all of these ordinances all address panhandling. We're not addressing panhandling specifically. We're addressing the traffic safety concerns for pedestrians. And pushing them back, in my mind, makes me feel more comfortable. It gives us also an opportunity to make contact, provide services with them, try to offer them an opportunity to get some service if they need substance abuse or mental health or shelter or food or anything of that nature, without infringing on the right to still stand there with a sign.
Sure.
They could stand there with a sign and say, thank you. I mean,
Sure.
I've seen one guy, I don't think he's asking for money, but he may in a roundabout way, but he's just, I forget what it is, just one word. And so far, I've not seen any of them be aggressive. So I'm not trying to restrict them. I'm not trying to generate a problem for First Amendment protected rights. I am trying to protect them and our motorists.
Sure.
Yep,
Last last question. So once again, I get it, I understand.
Yes, sir.
You got a constitutional right, freedom of speech, you put whatever you want on the sign, regardless.
Yeah.
If you go out and enforce this, say I'm there, right, I'm holding the sign, you come up and say, hey, you're not 200 feet away.
Yeah.
If you warn me, I don't leave, right? So then you come back, you get to the point of enforcement.
Yeah.
If somebody pushes that, will it hold up? Is it constitutionally correct for us to implement this ordinance?
Well, we sent it to the solicitor, obviously, and the solicitor looked at it, and, the ones, and I'm going to repeat this, I guess, the ordinances that have had the problems are the ones that have banned panhandling. The ones that have stood up were the ones that simply addressed it from a public safety concern of pedestrian safety. That's why I think we would have problems if we said absolutely nobody can stand there, because then, you know, you, by a roundabout way, are trying to prohibit them from actually being able to be out there. And if our officers went up to someone, and you got to keep in mind, this whole diversion program, they could actually maybe not be charged. If they've got a substance abuse problem or a mental health problem, our police diversion program is a three-pronged program. And they would fall under the ordinances, or any of those Title 11 or Title 21 charges would actually fall underneath of the charges that you can divert from arrest to program with the AG's blessing, because they're the ones who came up with the list, the crimes that were eligible to divert from arrest to a program. You can't arrest your way out of these types of problems, and quite frankly, this gives us another opportunity to try to offer help and give them an opportunity to not get a charge or not get an ordinance violation, and maybe get them in treatment that they need. Because now we can say, we don't want to arrest you.
Right.
We've already warned you, we made you aware of it. Here's an opportunity. Let them
Right.
talk to a clinician and get them into that substance use disorder
Sure.
program. It's hopefully a holistic
Sure.
approach.
Well, I mean, the only concern I have, we're saying you can do it anywhere you want other than 200 feet. We're gonna push you back 200 feet.
Yeah.
To me, that's the point that I kind of struggle with. It's not that you can't do it at all,
Yeah.
because at what point is it safe? So
Yeah.
if the medium based on width or based on measurement, hey, you can do it all you want, but you just can't get 200 feet up until to the medium.
Crossover or an intersection,
Okay.
median. It's correct. And you know, you can say it's arbitrary, but when you look at the length of vehicles and you look at how far back they are from a traffic light, and then you start looking at where the crashes occur, that's about right.
Yeah, but are they gonna
Yeah.
measure it, or is somebody gonna go out there and say, let's measure 200 feet and mark it?
Yeah, well, you know, you bring up a good point, actually, Councilman. You absolutely do. And that may be something that we've got to discuss, to go ahead and put a marker out there.
Sure.
So that we all have that ability to do that. So good intentions sometimes have
Right.
these other things. And
Absolutely.
I appreciate the questions. They're really good
No, I
questions.
appreciate the answer,
Yeah.
and I appreciate what you guys do. They're just
Yeah.
some concerns, and I thought I'd voice them.
Nope, I absolutely understand the concern. There's a lot of dialect surrounding the laws and ordinances and panhandling and things of that nature right now. But when you have the numbers like this, that amount of crashes in those areas, and the not just crashes, but the rate of fatals, and, you know, we've been a while since we've had a fatal in the city, and unfortunately, you know, we've had multiple ones all around us,
Sure.
too.
No, and
People
I
just
get
aren't
that.
paying attention right now.
I get that, I just didn't want somebody to come back and say, you know what, you infringed on my rights. I have a
Yeah.
right
And
to
I
be here,
can't-
I have a right to protest, I have a right to hold a sign, and then we get in a situation where we're starting to enforce something, and someone pushes back on it.
Yeah, and you know, once again, you bring up good points. It's nothing saying that anybody can go to the ACLU, anybody can make a complaint, anybody can make an appeal. And even, as, you know, even the Department of Justice could come back and say, nope, that's that's an infringement on the First Amendment rights. They can do that, but in this particular case, being as mutual as I can, I guess, bipartisan, I think this doesn't prohibit them from being out there, doesn't restrict them. It pushes them back into a safe area.
Sure.
So,
Awesome, thank you.
yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Other questions from council? Councilman Henderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, could you sometime prior to the second reading provide data on pedestrian accidents?
I can, yeah. We've had some, not a lot, but we have had some.
You know, this is a public safety issue, and there unfortunately have been vehicle to pedestrian accidents, and I think everyone, most would agree that we want to try to make that safer. So if you could, you know, I've looked through some of the reports, and some of them have pedestrian, I think the pedestrian heading is fairly new. So when you go back several months, maybe it wasn't there because there weren't any. But I'd be interested to know the number of pedestrian accidents in the city limits, not necessarily pinned to the 200-foot
Yeah.
measure, but throughout the city.
Yeah, I can give you that. We had a fatal, as you know, this summer with a bicyclist right at the intersection there with Bridgeville Highway. So that's another intersection, busy. We have a lot of busy intersections and a lot of traffic. people aren't paying attention. We're in headbuds, their phones, and, you know, if you've seen, we've had a significant increase in traffic enforcement as well. And it's still on the uptick. But I'll take care of that, and I can send these other things to you, to the city manager to be distributed as well.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Santos?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, Chief, with this ordinance, would there be traffic citations as well?
Yeah, no. This is the ordinance as it's presented. If you look under the, like I said, General 1 provisions, that's the fine. So we can write a summons or a traffic citation citing our own ordinance with our own fine. We put that into the law library with the state of Delaware, and that's how we enforce that. So, but once again, there's legislation to do away with the loitering, the criminal charge. Title 21 still has a charge that you could cite them with, but we wouldn't do that. We would just go after our own ordinance. And quite frankly, we would also try to use our diversion program to divert the arrest to get them the assistance they need. That's the goal, to keep them safe.
This was in regards to letter C, no operator of a vehicle shall park, stop, or leave standing a vehicle on a city street where prohibited, or suddenly decrease the speed of said vehicle or deviate from a traffic lane for the purpose of responding to persons violating. So if someone was within those 200 feet.
So that would be, in other words, part of the problem or you're part of the solution, quite frankly, I guess is what comes to mind. Because if a motorist makes the decision to stop inadvertently and to roll their window down, holding traffic up behind them and hand money out, they're potentially causing people to be distracted and have an accident because they've stopped in the middle of a roadway. And that's what that is. So yes, you could cite a motorist for a violation of the ordinance under C if they are in violation of A or B, correct?
And it would be a warning?
First time is always. So, you know, I'm a big believer in education, right? And then citation. But I think that this would require us to do what Councilman Henderson and I did. We'll do a media push, social media push. We'll put up our digital signboards. Anybody we come in contact with, we'll make sure our officers have a copy of this new policy or ordinance, make sure we hand it to them, and make sure we reach out to our nonprofits as well, and whole process. Yeah. No one wants to just go around and start citing folks. The whole idea is to prevent it. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
I have one.
Councilman Henderson?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of concentration on panhandling, but, you know, someone who's holding up a sign in protest of some issue that is 300 feet from an intersection, and a vehicle slows down to make a comment and impedes traffic, that is another key issue. So, I mean, although the person is well within their rights to display their sign and exercise their rights, whether panhandling or just stating an opinion, you know, other people can react, and if they're in a motor vehicle and they cause it, and, you know, if they impede regular flow of traffic, then I think that's what your letter C is for.
It's for anyone that suddenly stops, because as you know, if somebody brake checks you or someone steadily stops because of whatever reason, people aren't expecting that, especially if it's not at a stoplight, or if they're coming up and they still got plenty of distance in front. People are just, once again, the data shows that they're just distracted. They got a lot on their minds, and for whatever reason, and there's probably plenty of reason to have a lot of stuff on people's minds right now, but it's easy to jump to panhandling, and I know that's why we went. That's why I brought plenty of stuff here to talk about it, because I know that's really what brought it to the attention, because not a lot of other people were out there. And as far as incidents with folks panhandling, it just started recently too. It's been going on all around us, but it's just came to the city of Seaford. And it's just unfortunate that we're a big city, and we have a lot of traffic, and we have a lot of crashes. And we were doing much better until this year. It's just, and our citations have significantly increased. So we need to just keep after it, and hopefully this will help if the council approves this ordinance. Yes, sir.
All right. Other questions? Councilman King?
Thank you, Mayor. With public safety in mind, thinking of some of these deceleration lanes and turning lanes, I'm thinking like the one coming to McDonald's. When you're pushing somebody back 200 feet, some of those some of those turning lanes, to me, it would, and I haven't measured it with a tape, but to me, if you're saying, hey, you know, you're pushing me back 200 feet and you're right at the beginning, if not maybe a few feet into that turning lane, we talk about distractions. I guess to me, that would cause a little bit of a concern too. If I'm getting into that turning lane and the first thing I see is, you know, could kind of freak you out if there's somebody standing here with a sign or somebody panhandling. So I think the 200, some of those intersections at 200 feet, to me, is a concern because it may push them into a turn lane or a deceleration lane. And that, you know what I mean? So that could cause a little bit of distraction to the driver as well, when you look at the amount of footage.
So I would answer that, like at McDonald's is probably one of the worst intersections, right? Really, there probably wouldn't be anywhere on that small concrete island that they could stand, because this is not just at an intersection, it's at a crossover. And you have the crossover coming out of McDonald's, and you have the intersection, and when we measure that, and you come back 200 feet this way, 200 feet this way, there's not gonna be much area there, but can't disagree with you. It can't ever be perfect. We can just try to make it better.
Yeah, so coming from Concord, going to Bridgeville, that turn lane there in McDonald's, if you're saying 200 feet, I get where they're on the little crosswalk. But if you're saying we're gonna push you back 200 feet,
Oh, you're
it's
talking
gonna.
about on the highway?
Yeah,
So it's a highway?
yeah.
No, I think that
It's
if we
gonna
push
push
you
you-
back from that main intersection 200 feet, you're still significantly improving pedestrian safety and significantly improving motorist safety. Is it perfect? Is it better just not have them there? I would say probably better not to have anybody there.
No, I get that. But
But
I'm
I
saying
think-
that's the first thing you could see
Yeah,
as you get into the turn lane is somebody standing there holding the sign or panhandling.
yeah. I still think that we would have problems if we tried to say, absolutely no one can stand here and hold signs. I think you're gonna run into problems with that. And I don't think we really want to go to that level and cause that problem, because then you're just saying, you're really infringing on someone's right at that point, I think. I think this way, we're just focusing on pedestrian safety. It's safer to have them back. Might not be perfect, but it's a heck of a lot safer. I think that's my general opinion anyway. But I can't disagree with what you're saying.
Any other questions from council? All right, this is a first reading, so the chief will be back at our next meeting.
Thank you, Chief.
Chief,
Thank you.
appreciate your leadership on this and
Thank you.
trying to
Thank
do
you,
your
sir.
best to keep our community safe. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, next we have amending to Chapter 15, and Mr. Bailey's going to walk us through.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for
Good
having me.
evening.
So this is a first reading to amend Chapter 15 relating to solar facilities. We were recently approached by a developer looking to install a large-scale solar facility out on a commercially zoned property on Sussex Highway. And looking through the zoning ordinance as it was written, there was no provisions in there anywhere for anything solar-related. So that led us to research some sister communities on what they had for solar facilities in their zoning ordinance. So I kind of cherry-picked some things from different areas and put this together. And it does go throughout all of the zoning areas in the code. So there's a lot of sections here that will be amended if this is passed. But just to go through the majority or all of them as the first reading, in definitions, we added number 112 for solar energy systems, and it breaks it down into two different categories: an accessory system, and that's for any roof-mounted or freestanding solar array that is an accessory to and incorporated into the development of a permitted use on a parcel, and which is designed for the purpose of reducing or meeting the on-site energy needs. So this we already have in town. People have on the rooftops. There's some areas that have them freestanding in their yards, in the industrial parks. Ross Business Park, there's two. So we already have this. We already permitted that as an accessory use. And then the other one that we didn't have any provisions for at all was the large-scale system is a non-accessory commercial facility, including shared community facilities comprised of one or more freestanding ground-mounted devices that convert sunlight into electricity for the primary purpose of wholesale or retail sales of the generated electricity. So this would be something like the city installed out there by the utility building. That doesn't, it's not an accessory use to that structure out there, but so we added that, and then in each separate zoning section will go to R1, and that's section 1513 as an accessory use. We just added the accessory solar systems because they're already existing in that zone, and we want to keep it that way if people want to put them on their rooftops or things like that. And then in R2, their accessories, it's not specifically laid out, but it references R1. So that's covered in there. But we did add the large-scale solar facilities subject to section 15-40A number 4, which that's all the details for the large-scale facilities. And I added it there because we may have a community come into town in an R2 zone that wants to have a community solar facility where it would benefit those homes just in that community. In section 1525, that's the R3 accessory uses, and that's an accessory solar system. 15-27C, that's the R4 accessory uses for an accessory solar system. 15-30, that's the C1 accessory uses for the accessory solar systems. And then C2, it's when we get into the large-scale solar facilities. It's a number 4 in that section. And I'll read these into the record. So the large-scale solar facilities are subject to the following special requirements. Then it goes into A, no storage of materials and trucks, and no repair facilities or housing of repair crews except within completely enclosed buildings. B, architectural design of an exterior of any building shall be subject to section 15-97. That's a section we already had in the code that wants the buildings to match the character of the neighborhood, the exterior facade requirements and things like that. C, perimeter fencing of the entire site with a minimum of 8 feet in height. D, screening requirements subject to section 15-92. This is your landscape buffer around the site. Setbacks as required in section 15-42, and that's the setbacks for a C2 zone. So we want them to be the same as any building in C2. F, maximum height, 15 feet as measured from the grade at the base of the structure to the apex of the structure. G, shall not be located in any special flood hazard areas without the proper review and approval by the floodplain administrator. H, maximum generation capacity is 1 megawatt. I, maximum land area shall be 3 acres. J, we want bonding for 100% of the removal costs. K, a development plan showing all necessary improvements shall be submitted to the Board of Adjustment for approval. And L, the installation of a solar facility shall benefit the residents and/or businesses of the City of Seaford and not be contrary to the health, safety, or welfare of the City of Seaford. And this section is in the special use requirement. So it has, any large-scale solar facility would have to go to the Board of Adjustments for a special use exception. And then from there, we went to section 15-41, that's the C2 accessory uses for an accessory solar system. And then section 15-48F, that's the M1 accessory use section for an accessory solar system. 15-51 accessory uses in M2 for an accessory solar system. And that was all the amendments for that.
All right, are there any questions for Mr. Bailey in regards to the amended Chapter 15 regarding solar facilities? Councilman King?
Thank you. So Mike, question, we just raised electric rates again. So if a power company comes in, a solar company wants to come in, put up a facility, do they have the option to sell that electricity back to the city?
That would
Yeah,
be-
so they
yes.
could, okay, they would have to work with us, and there are certain rules and regulations that they would have to go through, but yeah, that's a possibility. I mean, we have a solar farm, as our building official mentioned, we've looked at that in the past to do that. But as stated, and again, I'd like to commend the building official for the research he did here and how thorough this is. But I think the big thing here, the installation of the solar facility shall benefit the residences and/or businesses of the City of Seaford and shall not be contrary to the health, safety, and welfare of the City of Seaford. One of the big things here is we would encourage what you're talking about, the construct you're laying out, if it benefited the city, in some way, or the city residents. If it is for someone else outside of the city, and city residents have to, put up with the downsides of it, with no benefit, that's what I think we are trying to avoid.
Sure, yep, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions from council? Councilman McCoy?
It's more of a comment. I'm going to tie in with city manager saying, Mike, I really appreciate this. I think it's very thorough. I think it's very proactive to think what other scenarios could come up in the future, whether it be residential. I think we're going to have more situations when people are going to inquire about solar, so I appreciate you doing the due diligence on this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions from council? Yeah, we've already been down this path on solar farms before, so I appreciate your work on this. Councilman Henderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to express my gratitude for item L, and would just like to point out that we've spent millions of dollars on infrastructure to develop C2 lands along the Route 13 corridor and other places in town for the highest and best use of these C2 properties. And they're getting ready to be covered up with solar arrays that we just ran some water and sewer by, spent all that money on, that we won't be able to recover the best use or the best beneficial use out of that property. You know, for as long as I've been on council, we've been talking about economic development. And we're getting ready to strand 30-some acres, possibly. And it would, of no benefit, it's going to require police protection, fire protection. Other items will need to be done at the city's expense to protect this piece of land with no direct benefit. And I just think that it's a great idea. I'm all for solar as well, you know, but it needs to be done to the benefit of the stakeholders here in the city. So I'm grateful that for that portion of it, because I see it, you know, it's just like farmland. I mean, Queen Anne's County, if you go down Route 404, is carpeted with solar panels that don't benefit the people of the Queen Anne's County. It goes to Johns Hopkins, you know, to the benefit of Johns Hopkins. So I don't want to get into a situation like that. And to dovetail on the councilman or city manager's comment about whether we would be able to receive that power, I mean, this is within the city limits, and I would argue that it would need to be tied to the distribution of the city of Seaford's distribution system. However, they want a grid or tie it into the transmission of the distribution system of Marble Power potentially. We don't know all the ins and outs of it. There's not been a whole lot of disclosure about it, but it doesn't seem like they want to connect to ours and use our infrastructure. So my thing would be is how can, if you have a 5% penetration of solar for your portfolio to be on your distribution, how can you, and we're at 5 or over, we're right at that threshold, how would you be able to put 2 megawatts? How many megawatts was it?
I think when we did
Was
some
it 10?
calculation, it was 9 or 10, yeah.
10 megawatts of power through our distribution system. So I just have major questions.
And Councilman, you're remembering correctly, but what you're remembering is the net metering legislation. So we only have to provide by law 5% of our peak with a net meter, which we are at. So you could theoretically build a solar array to offset your power that was not net meter eligible.
I agree, but that 5% was initiated because it was the threshold so that it wouldn't adversely affect your infrastructure. And
You are correct.
If you're going to put 10 megawatts onto the city, which is more than a third of the total consumption of the city, that requires a major investment, which who would pay for that?
Well, and that's the key. I mean, the Director of Electric, who's here, certainly can speak to this better than I can, but we've looked at these large-scale solar facilities, utility-scale solar facilities, and there are control issues. There are issues of when the sun is not shining or the clouds go over and you cause harmonics on your system. So yeah, something like this would require quite a bit of improvement, express feeders back to the substation, so on and so forth.
Okay.
So I just have major concerns about solar facilities within the city that are of such scale.
Right. Agreed. Any other questions? If not, this is, again, a first reading. Mr. Bailey, thank you again for your leadership on this and bringing this forward to us. We appreciate it.
Mike.
Thank you. All right, under old business, we have Mr. Stewart's going to come back and give us an update.
Good evening, Mayor,
evening.
Council, Councilman, City Manager. Thank you for allowing me to come back once again for the third time on this. Sean Stewart, Century 21 Home Team Realty. Just wanted to give you an update. As of 11/26 today, we got approval from Wells Fargo for the short sale. We've got between 72 hours and 60 days to be able to close on the property at the agreed upon purchase price, but it has been approved, and I've got documentation I sent over to the city today for that. Oh, somebody already went there. Okay, so just to give you an update on some of the things that we're going to do to this beautiful property. Exterior improvements is to repoint the brickwork, going to keep the brick the way that it is, install a new roof, all new windows around the property, install new vinyl siding to replace the current siding, front yard landscaping, and in the very back to the left of the property, you'll see there's a detached garage there, and the plan is to renovate the detached garage as well, with the roof and siding, it's brick as well. And then for the interior, that property is a lot bigger than what it looks from the outside. So the plan is there's 5 bedrooms currently there on the first floor. And it would be to knock down one of the partitions there to make it a living room. And it would be a 4-bedroom, 2-bath downstairs unit with a living room, office den, study area, a bathroom in the master bedroom as well. And then upstairs on your right, it's pretty much the same layout that's there now. We're just remodeling the kitchen. Has 2 bedrooms, utility room, 1 full bath in the living room area. I submitted a timeline over to Mike. It was just a little bit earlier today, honestly. And just, I know a concern with the council is timeline, and construction timeline and materials is not getting any better. So, just based off of where we are today, we have an anticipated timeline from the time that we're able to close to the time that the property can be in the condition that we're presenting here to you today of, the first, second week of July. Actually, we set a deadline as the 31st of July to have everything done, just with some contingency time in there. I will say the biggest issue right now, obviously, is your mechanicals and windows. So depending on how long it takes the plan is to update all of the HVAC, plumbing, the electric, and then replace all of the windows. Obviously, we weren't going to order any windows until we got approval from the city. So that clock doesn't start ticking until, after we get word from you. Along with me tonight is the purchaser of the property, Joseph Cook, and he wanted to be able to talk to and introduce himself to the city council as well. So I'll turn it over to him.
First of all, good evening, Mayor, City Managers, to the council.
Good evening.
I guess the first thing I just want to let you know is that I'm a local guy. I'm an '89 graduate of Seaford High School. My parents graduated from Seaford High School. I'm a 32-year Delaware Army National Guard member, proudly. Graduate of Delaware State University, and I live in Delaware. And so my mother lives almost 2 houses over on 212 North Front Street. So you can see, this is maybe my cheesy way of getting home. But it really does give me an opportunity to do something that I have a passion for. You know, of course, at some point, I'm going to see the end of this journey as a military member. And one of the things I really like is, of course, economic development, revitalization. And so it's something that I have a passion for because it makes areas better, increases property value. It also helps to eliminate crime and opportunities for people to have these pockets where they can do, you know, some unsightly things. And it really does create value for home ownership, if not just for rental space when you have a city that's growing. Looking at all the development that's happening with Amazon and others, having good habitable opportunities for families matters. And I want to do that. You know, I am very passionate about it. I don't want to see slumlord opportunities. I want to see really salient, you know, properties that people can enjoy, feel safe, and contribute to their community. And I am also, coincidentally, there's a property, 406 North Street, that has already been slated for demo, and that's okay, because I will at some point come here with plans to build something there. I'm in the process of trying to close on it, because again, I want to take an opportunity and do something productive here. And you'll hopefully have an opportunity to hear from me more and be able to see, since it's very close to this location, you know, the progress as we move forward, with your blessing, of course. But it's something I'm excited to do, because I get a chance to be home more often. I live personally in Middletown, just because I work in Newcastle County. But, you know, it's something that I'll make sure that we deliver as planned. I do get to leverage the experience of being a service member, and one of the things that we are very diligent about is timelines, deliverables, and scheduling the things that we can, but we will manage the issues as they're required and make sure that all the requisite permits are submitted on time and paid accordingly. So subject to your questions.
Well, appreciate you coming here tonight and introducing yourself, and it's always good to see a Seaford grad come back home and do good things. But did want to offer council an opportunity to ask any questions for Mr. Stewart or Mr. Cook.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. First of all, thank you for your service.
Thank you, sir.
And just to piggyback on what the mayor said, it's awesome to see somebody that wants to come back home and make a difference and get involved. So I appreciate you being here tonight, and things go the way I think they'll go, then it's exciting. It's an exciting time for everyone.
Thank you very much, sir.
Any other questions from council? If there are no questions, then I will accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the request from Sean Stewart, Realtor, to forego demolition of 229 North Front Street due to a pending sale of the property to a new owner as presented.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Henderson. Is there a second?
Councilman King, I'll second that motion.
Okay, are there any questions on the motion? If not, we'll do a roll call vote. Councilman Henderson?
Aye.
Councilman Santos?
I'm going to abstain because he's my super
Understood.
broker.
Yep. Councilman King?
Aye.
Councilman McCoy?
Aye.
And Councilman Holland?
Aye.
Okay, it's approved. Good luck. Please keep us posted, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for
Mr.
coming.
Cook. Nice meeting you.
We don't.
Okay, so we're going to skip over old business number 2, and we'll go to the cleaning services bid, and we're going to invite up Mr. Bennett.
Yeah.
Point of order, do we need to reject the bid?
I don't think so. Our bid documents say we can award any piece of it any way we want, which
Thank
we
you,
did.
Sean.
We did award the
That's fine.
one.
Thank
So,
you.
yep, I think we're good.
Appreciate you coming up without a chair.
No problem. Good evening again, Mayor and Council, City Manager.
Good evening.
A couple weeks ago, I was here and presented the cleaning service bid. I was asked to contact the other 3 bidders and come back tonight. The next low bid was Interstate Premier Facility Service Provider. I talked with Kevin Weller, the Executive Director of Operations. They would have local supervision. They have a Delaware manager, lives in Bowers Beach. He actually came over and introduced himself. So he would be the manager. He would have 3 assistants. They don't use any subcontractors. All their workers are employees of the company, and they do a background check and fingerprint every employee. If any of you are familiar with state buildings, you get that ID badge to enter as a contractor to state building. All their employees have that clearance. They would utilize existing employees. They may need to add one employee, so they would be doing a hire of somebody at that time. One of their references was in the Moores Foundation. I contacted them. They do all of the clinics and outpatient outreach centers. They're very happy with them. They've used them for several years, and they feel that this company stepped up the quality of cleaning, and they use them to maintain their cleaning product inventory. They would be ready to start. The FY '22 budget for this was $49,608. '23 was $51,096.24, and '24 was $52,629.13, for a total of $153,333.37. The next low bid was Oceanside Elite Cleaning and Building Services. Talked with the owner of that, Noreen Kushner. They have enough employees in the Seaford area, they wouldn't have to hire new employees. They have a field manager, and they operate out of Milton. If needed, the office manager, the field manager, the owner's husband, and the owner jump in to clean up if they need to, especially right now with COVID where people are out. One of their references was the town of Lewis. I called, left a message for the town manager, but they had not called me back yet at this time. Their prices for FY '22 was $68,874. FY '23 was $70,928. FY '24 was $73,068.70, for a total over 3 budget years of $212,870.70. The fourth bidder was Don Lee Margin. I talked with Jack Chambers. He would be our contact if they were given the bid. Butch Lord would be the alternate. He feels he has enough staff at this time to cover the bid. His bid for FY '22 was $59,540. FY '23, $71,500. FY '24, $81,900, for a total of $212,940. So after researching the other three bidders, talking with all three of them, I would recommend awarding the bid to the second lowest bidder, Interstate Premier Services Corporation, in the amount of $49,608 for the FY '22 budget year.
Okay, are there any questions for Director Bennett in regards to the cleaning services bid? Councilman Henderson?
I appreciate you taking a second look. I know you got a lot to do, and mulling over all this a second time was time consuming. I do appreciate it. But if you could, or either of you, the city manager or the director, explain the math to me, because fiscal year '22, there's only 5 months left in that, and you got $49,000. How does that work out?
Our bid documents, and Bill's going to correct me if I'm wrong, he's as familiar with the bid documents as I am. Our bid documents were for a full fiscal year for FY '22. We coordinated this bid with the budget because we wanted to make those transitions and have those numbers to put in for accurate budgeting. We republished those bid numbers, or I'm sorry, the bid itself. We republished it basically in a hurry because our existing vendor notified us of termination. So they gave us a price for the full year, but it will be prorated for the remaining months.
That's what I'm concerned about.
Did I state that appropriately,
Yes.
Director Bennett?
Yeah. So
Makes
it's-
sense.
Yeah, that satisfies me. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Other questions in regards to the bid? Councilman McCoy.
Just a comment tying in with Vice Mayor Henderson. Appreciate you doing the due diligence. I know there was a lot of questions the first time, and you were very thorough in providing us all these answers, so very thankful. So thanks for your time.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? If not, I'll accept the motion.
Councilman Holland, Mr. Mayor, make the motion to award the bid for cleaning service to Interstate Premier Services Corporation in the amount of $49,608 as presented.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Holland. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Councilman McCoy, second. Are any questions on the motion? If not, we'll do a roll call vote. Councilman Holland?
Aye.
Councilman McCoy?
Aye.
Councilman King?
Aye.
Councilman Santos?
Aye.
Councilman Henderson?
Aye.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Bennett.
Thank you, Bill.
Appreciate your
Mr.
work on
Bennett,
this. All right, and last we have the second reading of Chapter 15 Municipal Code.
Okay, so council will recall at the last council meeting, we did a first reading of amendments to section 1536 of the zoning ordinance. And these amendments that are included here in the red line copy align our zoning ordinance with our charter. They were not exactly aligned, so we decided to align the zoning ordinance, and it talks about appeals of a Board of Adjustment decision. And the process that's outlined here would be, if someone does not like the decision of the Board of Adjustment, they would then come to this body in front of the council to make that appeal. If they don't like the decision the city council makes, then they go to the court of competent jurisdiction. The attorney did review this, and he did add in some language you can see there in blue. He doesn't want, he wanted it to be clear in the language that anybody who's aggrieved by a decision of the Board of Adjustment can go right to the court system. Nothing stops that, but it does lay out the process. It does, this, if adopted, would match the charter, and so this is really just a cleanup of language in the zoning ordinance.
All right, are there any questions in regards to the language change in Chapter 15? If not, I'll accept the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the amendments to language of Chapter 15 of the Municipal Code of the City of Seaford, Article 8, Board of Adjustments, Section 15 to 136, to clarify the process for appealing a decision by the Board of Adjustment as presented.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Santos. Is there a second?
Councilman Holland, I second that motion.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions on the motion? If not, we'll do a roll call vote. Councilman Santos?
Aye.
Councilman Henderson?
Aye.
Councilman Holland?
Aye.
Councilman McCoy?
Aye.
Councilman King?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. All right, reminders of meetings.
Sir, we only have one. The City of Seaford Planning Session is this Friday, January 28th, from 8:30 to 3:30 p.m. at the Ross Station Events Center. So see all of you there.
Okay, very good. All right, we'll go to committee reports. We'll start off with administration and IT. Councilman Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My report has been submitted in its entirety. There were a few meetings that were attended by city staff. They went to the carpet installation at the GMB office building. They attended the golf course quarterly meeting. They had a year-end interview with Lynn Starr. They attended the industrial park fence and bid opening, participated in interviews for the county representative position. For the IT report, they rebuilt the VDI environment to clean up images and resolve issues. They've been testing print server software to resolve printing issues and all of their business is routine. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Next we'll have police fire. Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In addition to my regular interval report, in the packet, there is a 2021 Seaford Volunteer Fire Department report, which is incredibly detailed, and highly recommend that you go over it. It's far too intensive to share here tonight. However, it is included in the packet for the public and for the councilman to review. Nonetheless, I will go through the regular report. Seaford Volunteer Fire Department Chief John Wilson's report is as follows. We have 72 fire calls to date for an average of 3.0 fire calls per day. In EMS calls, there are 299 calls to date for an average of 12.4 EMS calls per day for a total call volume of 371 for the year, and that's 15 calls on average per day. Several significant calls. There was out of the city, there was a working fire on a rear deck. There was an assist of Station 72 on Rabbit Run Road. That would be Bridgeville. And out of the city, there was a working agricultural building fire out on Cannon Road. And within the city, there was a fire on Perkins Street, working residential fire, which extensively damaged that residence. Currently, all apparatus is in service. Under EMS, they hired a firefighter EMT, Mr. James Durr, for full-time position. He comes from the Christiana Fire Department, and he also worked in New Jersey. He's started his probationary period, and he's doing well. So if you encounter Mr. Durr, welcome him. There's another employment posting, and it's currently out to hire 4 lieutenant positions to cover leadership opening on all shifts. Under training, the last training class was held on January 19th with CPR and AED for members who expire in 2022, and equipment rules of extrication tools, and 20 members attended. The next training class is February 16th with, pardon me, forcible entry skills at Station 87. That's where you get to tear stuff up. The fire administrative officers were installed on January 12th. Chief Jack Wilson, Deputy Chief Matt Reed, First Assistant Chief Ben O'Beer, Second Assistant Chief Adam Ryan, Third Assistant Chief is still open. President is Patrick Gaskin. Vice President position is open, which Derek Adams holds until filled. Secretary Ken Tall, and there will be more news on Ken here in a minute. And the treasurer is Jim Mitchell. Under fire prevention poster essays, all in-district winners except for Montessori School have been presented their Seaford Volunteer Fire Department awards. Gia Forston from Seaford Central Elementary has won first place for Sussex County and will be representing Seaford Volunteer Fire Department and Sussex County for the Delaware State Fire Prevention Poster and Essay Contest. The update on Ken Tull is Ken has returned home to Seaford as of January 17th. He's still getting rehabilitation, and he's actually visiting the firehouse and for several hours and getting some work done. So when you see him, welcome him home. He's been through a long and hard and continues to recuperate from his injuries. Under other news, there's the department remains active with community engagement. As you'll see down here, of pardon me, of specific note, the Atlanta Roadhouse, which recently had a controlled burn and an exercise, has been demolished and has been removed, and they're filling in the holes and regrading, and I think that's nearing completion. Under Seaford Police, Chief Kraft has submitted his report with columns for the year-to-date totals. And under criminal, under all crimes, there were 176 total crimes reported. You'll see the distribution there at the, below that, with an 86.3% clearance rate. It looks like during this period, Friday nights were the most active period during this period. Under additional crimes data below, you'll see that distribution along with drug complaints. Under traffic, there were 259 traffic contacts, with roughly a third of those resulting in citations, 87, and 14 warnings. There were 3 DUIs, 2 alcohol and 1 drug related. 15 crashes during the period. 3 of them were hit and runs. Fortunately, there were no bicycle or pedestrian accidents in the period. A number of significant events which are actually too numerous to go one by one, but I will note, I've lost it here. On the 22nd of January, the Seaford Department assisted St. Mary's County Sheriff's detectives, and they contacted Seaford PD for assistance in an attempted murder case. So this resulted in a vehicle pursuit and a lot of activity where the suspect fled into Maryland, and the suspect, it ended up that the suspect actually shot herself prior to apprehension, but she did survive. Is the chief still here? No, I don't think so. He left, but her injuries were life-threatening, but she did survive, and the latest news I have is that she is still with us. So there are numerous other complaints, but that was a fairly spectacular one. Under administration, the chief attended various meetings. He attended a statewide chiefs meeting, the Sally and Edie statewide grant meeting, and there was a police applicant that they interviewed, and there was a 5K run meeting with the Boys and Girls Club, in which Deputy Chief, the Patrol Lieutenant, and Chris Couch with the Boys and Girls Club attended. And on the 17th, the police department did assist with an escort for Ken Tull into city limits. So that was pretty nice.
Pretty spectacular.
That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll have Code, Parks, and Rec. Councilman Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Parks and Recs. They had held the 4th week of youth wrestling. Last practice will be February the 7th. They completed basketball pictures in the first week of basketball games. And they had purchase eggs for the annual Easter egg hunt, which will be Saturday, April 9th at 10 a.m. at the Sports Complex. And they are reviewing and researching upcoming grants for the F-23 budget. And that concludes the report for Parks and Rec, and we'll switch over to Code. Rental licenses have been sent out, and 1,042 rental licenses have been issued out of a total of 1,657 units. Merrifield 2 is waiting for 4 townhouse units to be delivered, and the 7-Eleven store building is being framed. And the new Dollar Tree located at Nylon Capital Center is in its completion stages, and all the work is routine. That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have Electric. Councilman McCoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The report's been submitted in its entirety. I'll hit a few of the bullet points. Since the last report, the crew, Greg Brook and Ed, attended the meeting with the developer of the Bel Air single-family houses. Nick Moore and Tyler Sewell took some of their lineman tests respectively. And they worked on the street lights along Sussex Highway. In regards to our director, he had a standard director's meeting, council liaison meeting, and staff meeting. And he submitted the 2021 APPA Safety Award information. Electric Department's done a great job of safety this past year. Kudos to them. Attended the council meeting about the request to purchase a new locator and had a meeting on site about the lift station upgrade at the SVSC. Over the course of the next few weeks, Dylan Calloway will take week 1 of 8 for lineman school. Nick Smart will take week 7 of 8 for lineman school. They will help the Parks and Rec take down the Christmas tree in Gateway Park and work on the primary service to the residents at River Place Building 3. Again, it's a few bullet points. The report has been submitted in its entirety. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally, we have Public Works Wastewater Treatment, Councilman King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My report has been submitted in its entirety. I'm just going to touch on a few bullet points. I'm going to start with the Public Works Department. Over the last 2 weeks, the team has been extremely busy with equipment maintenance. They've repaired the panel on the leaf machine, and City Manager Anderson, if you can help me with that, if I understood correctly, they've extended pickup for leaf?
Yes, sir. Due to the employee shortages and not being able to get out at the end of the year, we normally put the leaf machine away at the end of the year. We are extending leaf pickup until the end of this month. We're going to keep it out till we get it all done, but our target is to be done by the end of January, so.
Awesome, thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The snow plow maintenance, the team did a great job with that. Burley, Mr. Mears has been working on this planning session PowerPoint, which he'll show us Friday. The department is still 1 person down, so there's job postings for that. I'm going to jump over to the wastewater treatment facility and compost. All is going well. Plant performance remains good. There's a little bit of compost left, and then at that will be the end of that project. We'll no longer be in that business. Some of the activities coming up over the next 2 weeks. They're going to be installing 2 taps at Ballinger Townhouses. They're going to be putting in a new pump panel, and then they're going to continue to repair and work on the clean out on the smoke testing list, and all other tasks are routines. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you very much. I do want to say thank you to all the city staff who pitched in while we were working through the trash bid. The city manager going around collecting trash. I also want to thank those who came forth with ordinance today, showing some bold leadership. Appreciate them doing what's right for our community. So with that, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A motion, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you.